Picture this, a sleek 4-engine speedboat slices through the turquoise waters of the southern Caribbean, likely launched from Venezuela's lawless northern coast. Think ports like Puerto, La Cruz, or La Guara, hotbeds for narco ops. Packed with enough drugs to supply an entire city, it's headed for the US, probably weaving through the Caribbean island chains like the Lesser Antilles, dodging patrols to offload at a quiet Florida cove or a Gulf Coast hideout like the Everglades or Louisiana's bayous. Then, boom! Flames erupt, bodies scatter, and 11 members of the Tren de Aragua cartel sink to the bottom of the ocean. This is no Hollywood thriller, guys. This is real. It's happening right now. On September 2nd, 2025, the US military dropped the hammer on a cartel vessel, marking the deadliest shift in drug interdiction since the war on drugs ever began. Today we're diving into this deep story on the badass operation that took down the Tren de Aragua boat, and then we'll explore 3 hypothetical ways that it went down with helicopters, drones, and potentially a stealthy underwater beast. We'll unpack Venezuela's ballsy response. Literally just after that strike, they did a flyby of a naval vessel with likely F-16s, although Venezuela also has Su-30s. So we'll break down their full response, where we go from here, and strap in, because essentially it's like the cartel has fighter jets. The Venezuela regime run by Maduro protects and works hand in hand with the cartels. So yeah, now we've got cartels with freaking F-16s. What could go wrong? Oh, and by the way, now we've got 10 F-35s in Puerto Rico to act against the cartels, to act against the Maduro regime. And who knows, these things could be striking cartel targets as we speak. So we're gonna check out that video now. So here's that cartel boat. This is not gonna end well for the Tren de Aragua. So this thing launched out of Venezuela and then boom! Schwack, as you can see, massive strike hitting the center mass of that boat. But stay to the end of the video for those 3 hypothetical situations on what likely took down that boat. The Pentagon is being very tight-lipped about what actually happened, but you came to the right place, you came to the right channel, where we'll break down the hypothetical situations that led to that strike and what we'll likely see moving forward from these F-35s potentially going up against the narco F-16s. Things have just gotten to a whole new level, guys. I'm glad you're here. If you can't tell, I'm a little bit excited. Imagine that, me, excited, weird. Let's dive in, and here we go. So back in March of 2025, the US designated the Tren de Aragua, aka the TDA, a Venezuelan cartel tied to dictator Nicolas Maduro, as a foreign terrorist organization. And that's not just paperwork anymore. It's a green light for lethal force. Fast forward to July, the US issued a classified directive ordering the Pentagon to treat these cartels like terrorists. No more catch and release, we're talking about kinetic action, kinetic strikes. And then by late August, the US has warships that are steaming towards Venezuela. China obviously condemns it. They're taking the side with Venezuela, and they call the US as interfering in the Maduro internal affairs. Yeah, like propping up a narco-state is internal. Maduro, it's almost like the gig is up. Maduro is indicted for $50 million on a narco-terrorism charge, conspiring with the Colombian FARC rebels to flood the US with cocaine, and potentially cocaine laced with fentanyl that is responsible for hundreds of thousands of deaths in the US, if not more. The Maduro, this dude, he's a kingpin. He's hiding behind a stolen presidency, and he's propped up a narco state. Congratulations, a narco state now has F-16s and Su-30s. What could go wrong? Destroyers like the USS Gravely and Jason Dunham patrolling the Caribbean now. The USS Lake Erie slipping through the Panama Canal, 600 miles southwest of Venezuela. And the sub USS Newport News lurking unseen, ready for any mission that it may be called upon to enact. Colombian President Gustavo Petro has said that this attack on that narco boat is murder, saying the US should have boarded and arrested, just like the old days. Yeah, just like the old days. Can't you guys just pretend to take action against these boats? Look at what the old days have produced. It's essentially like everything is still going on. The trafficking is still happening. So the techniques of the old days didn't work. So it's very strange that President Gustavo, who's supposedly an ally of the US, is saying you should just keep doing what didn't work in the past. Come on, can you just have a veil pretending you're having a war against drugs? Can you just have a veil pretending that you want to take action against these narco-terrorists? It's very interesting, that reaction. So, is there something behind the scenes with Venezuela and Colombia that we don't know about? Interesting. I wonder. Past interdictions have failed, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, speaking in Ecuador, said what will stop them is when you blow them up. So he's basically saying action has now shifted to real action and not the perception of action. And then President Trump, in a rare comment from the Oval Office, said they won't be doing that again. This op is unnamed so far, but the message is clear. They might as well call this Operation Gloves Are Off, because that's what the US's new technique is. So when the US decided to hit that boat, it was like unleashing decades of pent-up aggression. It was like decades of blue balls for the war on drugs for the US. And it's like everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face. In this case, the cartel just got punched in the face by Mike Tyson, and all things have changed. Because cartels haven't had this amount of violence enacted against them ever. So now let's zero in on Nicolas Maduro Moros, Venezuela's dictator who's pulling the strings behind the TDA cartel. He's not just a politician, if you haven't noticed already. He's the architect of an entire narco-state. He was indicted in 2020 by a Southern District of New York grand jury for narco-terrorism, conspiring with the FARC to pump cocaine into American streets. Now that $50 million bounty's on his head, dead or alive, and it's vibes that are straight out of the Wild West. Posters are strung up, and it's essentially like he's a bandit from the Wild West. This just got wild. All right, so let's war game this out. So reports are hinting at special operations aircraft. That could be a chopper or a drone. First, let's talk about the hypothetical situation with an MH-60R Seahawk from the USS Iwo Jima's deck. It's part of the amphibious readiness groups off of Puerto Rico, 500 miles north of Venezuela. These birds are naval workhorses, armed to the teeth for maritime dominance. They've been used to strike Houthi boats as well, so they've been tested in combat. They know how to go up against a boat extremely well. So technically, let's talk about the cool part. The Seahawks got the ANAAS 44 forward-looking infrared, or FLIR, for spotting boats from miles out in the pitch black of the darkness. It locks on with laser designations, painting the target like a sniper's dot. Then it unleashes an AGM-114 Hellfire missile, precision-guided laser homing beast with a tandem warhead that punches through armor before detonating a high explosive payload. The speed, just about 995 miles per hour. The range, about 7 miles. This thing's designed for tanks, but against a fiberglass speedboat, it's overkill to perfection. It's dusk in the Caribbean, the cartel's goons are cruising, bags of coke stacked like trophies, thinking they're untouchable because they've been untouchable for decades. And then suddenly, rotor wash ripples in the distance, waves increase. The Seahawk hovers low, like an invisible ghost stalking its prey. The pilot acquires the target and hammers down on the pickle button, releasing the Hellfire as it streaks out from the helo, a fiery arrow from the helicopter gods. The boat's crew spots it too late, if at all. The engines scream as they try to evade the chopper, but it's too late. The missile is already in flight, and then boom! Impact. The missile drills in, shreds the hull, ignites the fuel tanks. Boom! Fireball engulfs everything. So Maduro, the cartel boss, the honorable president of Venezuela, he didn't just sit back. After this strike on September 2nd, he hit back with a very ballsy move. On September 4th, 2 Venezuelan military aircraft buzzed a U.S. Navy vessel, likely a destroyer, like the USS Jason Dunham, in international waters. A stunt the Pentagon called a highly provocative move designed to mess with ongoing counter-narco terror ops. The DoD fired off a warning on X. telling the cartel running Venezuela to back off or face consequences. This wasn't a random flex. It was a deliberate attempt to intimidate the US Navy, coming right after the US obliterated TDA's boats, potentially friends of Maduro. The aircraft that Venezuela used, most likely narco F-16 Fighting Falcons from Venezuela's aging but potentially still lethal fleet. These US-built jets, maintained despite heavy sanctions on Venezuela, can hit 1,500 miles per hour, can carry an AIM-9 Sidewinder, and loiter for hours. They're perfect for harassment runs. And then Venezuela also has the Su-30, although reports seem to hint at the fact that they use F-16s in this ballsy flyby. Can you imagine those pilots? Those pilots of those F-16s, I mean, they know that they are a heartbeat away from being struck by US air power or naval power. So they're sitting there just sucking up the seat cushion into their cheeks, thinking of what that Navy ship that they're flying over could actually do to them, much less thinking about what the F-35s that are now in Puerto Rico could do to them. Hopefully Maduro gave these guys some coke prior to getting airborne so that they actually had no fear during this flyby. But flying low over a Navy ship like the Dunham, which bristles with Aegis radar and SM-2 missiles, is a very dangerous game. But the Navy's playbook, likely tracking these F-16s with fire control radars and then issuing sharp radio warnings to bug out. And if they push it, deploying electronic warfare to jam the F-16 systems or spoof their sensors. Worst case for the narco jets, a RIM 162 ESSM missile could swat the F-16s from the sky, and those narco jets know that even to up the ante, the US could deploy those 10 F-35 Lightning IIs against them in a moment's notice. They wouldn't even know they're there, and then all of a sudden, wham, those F-16s would shatter like a cheese grater full of metal falling into the ocean. It's just a matter of time, likely, before there is some sort of a showdown of air power in the Caribbean between Venezuela and the US. And this is just the start. This is the canary in the coal mine. Mark my words, there will likely be some sort of air-to-air engagement in the coming months, and I can't wait to cover that. But speaking of those 10 F-35s that are now stationed in Puerto Rico to go up against the cartels and fight against Venezuela's regime, these 5th-gen monsters pack an AN/APG-81 radar for unmatched surveillance. These F-35s have JDAMs for precision strikes. They've got AIM-120s to schwack these narco jets, and they can evade detection because of their stealth properties. They're paired with the 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit, and they're set to hunt drug routes, provide close air support for interdictions, or neutralize threats like Maduro's jets before they even get off the ground. This is air superiority on steroids, and it's a clear signal the Caribbean's becoming a no-fly zone for these narco thugs. And just the fact that the F-35s are going up against narco jets is just wild. The F-16s were given to Venezuela in the 1980s through a military sales program when tensions between the two nations were extremely low. Reagan actually saw Venezuela as a strong ally of the United States, and that's why these jets, these F-16As, were allowed to be sold to Venezuela, and they've updated them the best that they can. But really, these jets are now just going to provide a fun game of whack-a-mole for these F-35s. But I just gotta say it again, it's insane that now we have narco F-16s. We have a drug cartel, essentially, with the Maduro regime that's flying F-16s. I mean, Hollywood can't even write this stuff. This is insane. But now let's talk about hypothetical scenario number 2, and that is a drone strike. The New York Times did say that they think an MQ-9 executed this attack, but that's the New York Times. Let's just focus on if it actually did it, because the MQ-9 is an amazing weapon system. It's the Predator's big brother, the MQ-9 Reaper. It's operated by special ops, potentially from a trailer stateside or a forward operating base. Let's talk about a tech breakdown. The Reaper is a high-endurance UAV loitering up to 50,000 feet for 27 hours straight. Just insane capabilities here. It's packing the MTSB electro-optical infrared sensor for crystal clear video, even through clouds, and Gorgon Stare wide area surveillance to track multiple targets. The armament, up to 4 Hellfires or a GBU-12 Paveway 2 laser guided bomb, although the strike in this case looked like a Hellfire. And this drone's not just eyes in the sky, it's the judge, the jury, and the executioner. High above the Caribbean, the Reaper circles like a vulture. Its operators sipping coffee but dialed in to the highest level possible because they know the gravity of this strike. They're potentially operating out of Creech Air Force Base in Nevada. ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance feeds spot the boat. Thermal signatures show the crew. Cargo glowing hot from recent loading. The target's confirmed as a Tren de Aragua vessel heavily filled with narcotics. Clearance is granted and the drone dives to optimal altitude, releasing a Hellfire. The missile's rocket motor ignites and it arcs down at 1,000 miles per hour. The warhead detonates on contact, vaporizing the engines, splintering the deck, and flames consume the drugs, turning the poison into ash. Survivors? None. It's clinical, it's remote, and it's utterly dominant. Now let's talk hypothetical scenario number 3, and although I don't think this was used in this case, we gotta cover it because I think it will be used a lot moving forward. And this one's a wild card. It's the Manta Ray UUV. DARPA's Beast fits the classified assets that Hegseth has mentioned as potentially being used in strikes versus the cartels. Northrop Grumman's Manta Ray is an extra-large unmanned underwater vehicle designed for long-range autonomous ops in denied areas. It's modular with payload bays for torpedoes or mines. Energy harvesting from ocean gradients means indefinite loiter time. No batteries dying mid-mission. This thing can literally harvest energy from the sea, which is just insane. And then it's likely armed with Mk-54 lightweight torpedoes, which have a 12.8-inch diameter. They have a 96-pound warhead, and they have active passive homing that locks on hull vibrations or cavitations, and it cruises at about 46 miles per hour. Deployed from the USS Newport News sub near the Panama Canal, the Manta Ray ghosts under the waves miles from the target. It surfaces briefly for SATCOM updates, and then it sees a boat inbound. The coordinates are locked, it dives deep, and it closes in silently. Its sensors ping the speedboat's props that are churning under the water, basically creating a dinner bell for the UUV, which is now the worst nightmare and the worst predator that this boat could ever imagine. The torpedo splashes away. It spirals up and acquires the boat. It accelerates to above 46 miles per hour. The cartel feels a brief rumble and shake, and then what the boom! The boat explodes. The hull breaches. Explosive force lifts the boat airborne before it crumbles inward. Drugs scatter like chum. Flames on the surface. Total Submarine Warfare 2.0. Unseen, unstoppable, and the most stealthy option available. This Manta Ray UUV will change everything. It's like Neo bending reality in the Matrix, slipping through the grid, except this agent's delivering a red pill of a high explosive torpedo. But besides that, exactly the same. So reviewing that footage, guys, to me, my best assumption would be that that strike was done with a Reaper, with that massive drone up there unleashing a Hellfire, striking that boat. Just from what I've seen in that target footage, to me, I think that would be the most plausible situation, and I would expect to see many more strikes like this moving forward. And then the ultimate is happening, guys. It's an air war. The US air power going up against cartel narco jets. I can't wait to keep reporting this because I think the situation is just getting started and I think it's going to continue to explode. So I'll keep you posted moving forward. What do you guys think? Where do you think we go from here with these narco jets potentially going up against US air power and naval power? Let me know in the comments below. And hey, the best compliment you can give me is just watch this video right here. Watching this video right here helps the channel grow, and it's already working extremely well. The channel's growing because of your support, so thank you so much for that. I'll see you on this video right here. This is Ryan, also known as Max Afterburner, also known as the fighter pilot next door, signing off.